Hi, investigators. Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy, about to be joined by Pat Flynn, the National Training Manager of the Australian Security Academy, for this week's 37th episode of Australian Private Government and Corporate Investigator Weekly News, the program for people who like taking statements and love writing reports. So no matter where you are in Australia right now, I want you, if you're a licensed private investigator, quit your job. Just resign straight away. I have got Job of the Year for you today, and here it is. It's the MCC in Melbourne. Now, MCC stands for Melbourne Cricket Club, and the Melbourne Cricket Club, they require 2 professional, experienced and licensed investigators to conduct investigations on behalf of the Melbourne Cricket Club. So you'll be doing this throughout the cricket season and the footy season, and what that means is free tickets to the footy and free tickets to the cricket, and you're going to be there conducting investigations on behalf of the Melbourne Cricket Club. Now, this is really soft. I mean, you imagine, here's my license here, I'm the MCC PI, and I've got to investigate things that happen on behalf of the MCC. Now, in Melbourne, there is no place more up itself than the MCC. It has dress codes and dress standards. As you can see, here's the MCC's website, and it details the dress standards for people who are members of the MCC. Now, MCC members must dress appropriately. You are not allowed to wear thongs. I don't know how they check that. You are supposed to wear a shirt with a collar if you're a gentleman, and they don't want any riffraff there in football guernseys or beanies, and you'll be investigating anyone that tries to get in. So, ladies, you're not allowed to show anything that shows wear anything that shows a bare midriff. It's the snobbiest place you could ever find. 104,000 members. There's 62,000 current members, and there's a waiting list of almost of 250,000 people to get into the MCC. So you're not allowed to wear your footy jumper. You're not allowed to wear your beanie. And you're not allowed to wear anything that exposes your midriff. That's just low standard and not classy enough here for us members of the MCC who don't look at that type of thing. So you can become an investigator for the MCC. If you're looking for that job and you want to know more about it, go over to the Australian Security Academy's Australian Private Investigator, Corporate and Government Investigators jobs page, and you'll see that job and more. That's with the MCC in Melbourne. I mean, what are you going to investigate? Dress standards? Yes. Inappropriate behaviour. Yeah, I say, you're drinking the wrong kind, consuming the wrong kind of beverage there. That's beer. You should be having champagne here at the MCC. Oh yeah, quit your job, go and do that. It's a genuine position at the MCC in Melbourne. They want to keep riffraff. There's a lot of riffraff there in Melbourne around football. Jim Higgins, Paul York, Pat Henderson, Andrew Chambers, Ray Dent. Any of this riffraff might try and sneak in. Andrew Bulldog, did I say Jim Higgins? Jim Higgins again. So they try and sneak into the footy. We don't want them in the MCC. So your role as an investigator will be to keep the riffraff out. Good luck throwing out Pat Henderson. That's going to be great to watch. I look forward to seeing that one. It's been a really, really busy week at the Australian Security Academy, and there's a lot been going on. So let's get straight back into it and see what's been happening.
Investigation Industry Association sounds like a whole bunch of old people doing old people stuff.
It does sound like old people doing old people stuff at investigation industry associations, but actually they're not that much fun. But they do have some substantial benefits for their members. Some of those benefits are they advertise you free on their website. So if someone's looking for an investigator in your area, they will list that on your industry association's website. They also have a code of conduct. So clients who engage you as an investigator who's a member of that association can be assured that you firmly are committed to that code of conduct. Now, the AILA have come out this week and they've issued out, among other things at the AILA, their newsletter. And the AILA newsletter has basically covered many of the issues that industry associations have, and they've had some of the latest issues that have been discussed. Now, the newsletter of the AILA, which is the Australian Insurance Law Association, is called Resolve. And in the newsletter, they have just come out today, an article about a claim made by a young lady who was injured in camp drafting. And we've brought in Pat Flynn, the Australian Security Academy's National Training Manager, to talk through some of the issues of what you might be investigating if you're looking at someone that's had an injury claim in something like camp drafting. Welcome along, Pat. Good to have you here, mate.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Pat, can you go through some of the issues that might be relevant to camp drafting and how that would be worked from an investigation viewpoint?
Yeah, look, this raises an interesting issue, actually, in regards to some legislation that was introduced back in the early 2000s to modify the approach in personal injury negligence matters. So when you look at negligence, you've got to have a duty of care was owed, the duty of care was breached, and the actual breach caused the damages or harm. Now, if you have a look here, this that horse would be probably doing close to 60 to 70 kilometres an hour, or about 60 kilometres an hour. Now, what happened with the legislation back in the early 2000s, they brought in the Civil Liability Act. In Victoria, it's called a Wrongs Act. In South Australia, it's called the Civil Liability Wrongs Act, and I think in Canberra it's called the Civil Law Wrongs Act. So what it's been introduced to do is protect people that are in certain categories of what they do. Now, Good Samaritans, if you come across an accident or something that's occurred on the road where someone's injured and you, out of good intention, try to assist that person and maybe cause a further injury or whatever like that, the Civil Liability Act actually protects that. It also refines things for volunteers who work for organisations doing volunteer work. So you can't be civilly liable as a volunteer working for an organisation doing community good. Now, this is quite an interesting case because, I'll go back. With some of the investigations you do, you'll find that they'll be quite unusual. Now, you've got a lot of horse riding, horse club type issues that will come up. So where you've got a riding school where you can go down on the Mornington Peninsula and jump on a horse, or go to some other location, jump on a horse as an organised trail ride, that has different issues in respect to what is occurring here with the camp drafting. Now, if the organisation is providing the equipment or the means to undertake that recreational activity, the person who's running that organisation or is in charge or in a position of responsibility in the organisation, you have to look at what duty of care is owed. I remember many years ago I did an investigation for a gentleman who they made a claim against him, a common law claim for personal injury, and he hired out jet skis on the Gold Coast here. Now, where you've got jet skis, go-karting, there's another thing, go-karting. Sometimes you'll find things like quad bikes. You'll go to a particular location or a resort even, and people will get on the quad bikes and ride and hurt themselves. Now, if the organisation is providing that equipment and the means to undertake that recreational activity, they have a greater responsibility, because there is an obvious risk someone's going to hurt themselves. And that was one of the decisions that happened with this camp drafting claim. It's an obvious risk. You're riding very fast on a horse in a very confined area, and there is an obvious risk to it. The likelihood of becoming injured or even die because of a mishap on that horse is pretty high. So that activity would be classed as a dangerous recreational activity. Now, where you've got a dangerous recreational activity and the risk is obvious, the person who's organising that or running the event, they're not required to warn people that you might fall off the horse and hurt yourself because it's obvious. However, if you've got, say, a quad bike on a resort, you'd have to make sure you sat down and ensured that the person understood the safe operation of that quad bike. Or if it's in a go-kart park, you'd have to sit down, make sure that they understood that. And then on top of that, you've got to have adequate supervision. And so all of these things you need to address. So coming back to the camp drafting, the girl who was injured, she provided her own horse. She was familiar with the horse. Under the Civil Liabilities Act, this was an accident that happened in New South Wales, so it was the 2002 Civil Liabilities Act in New South Wales. And what they said there was obvious risk, so you don't need to warn someone. It touched on another issue of waivers or indemnities that people sign. In a lot of cases, those indemnities aren't a protection, like a complete protection to liability. You can still be liable even if the person who becomes injured signs a waiver. So if we go back to the go-karting, they might sign a waiver to say, yep, I'm absolving liability for you in case I hurt myself doing this. But if you were the person who was conducting the inductions for the operation of the go-karts, the maintenance of the track, all the issues, helmets, for example, the helmets would have to be approved to an Australian standard and recently approved. So things like that, they're all the questions you need to ask. So first of all, you have to understand, does the person who's the defendant owe the plaintiff a duty of care? And the answer to that with a reasonable person would be yes, if the risk is likely and it's going to have a serious consequence in regards to the outcome if something goes wrong. So where it's a little bit different for a horse riding club, for example, as opposed to this camp drafting, is the fact that you'd have to make sure that the person was adequately experienced in riding the horse before you put them on a horse. The selection of the horse would have to be very careful in regards to anyone who's somewhat inexperienced. So coming back to this camp drafting injury, the person who was injured, she was 19 years of age. She started camp drafting and started riding when she was about 6 or 8 years old. So she's had a number of years of experience in riding a horse. She has her own horse. The risk is significant. It's not insignificant. And what that comes down to is it comes down to a principle that is no wrong is done to one who is willing. So your voluntary acceptance of risk, where the risk is obvious and it's likely and it's serious, you can't get sued for it. So that's sort of the guts of it, pretty much.
Okay, so as an investigator, you don't have to know anything about camp drafting before you go and do that investigation. You only have to know what is relevant to this claim, how it was done at that venue, what the documentation, the policies, processes and procedures were for that event where that injury occurred. That's all you have to know. You do not have to be an expert on camp drafting to do that investigation, because it would be impossible to be an investigator and be an expert on all those things. Pat, stick around, will you please, mate? We'll have a look at another one in a minute that came out of Resolve, okay?
Yep, cool.
Thanks, Pat. Now, continuing on with industry associations, the AIPI, sponsored by Duxton Hill, their national conference is coming up in 2021. Given that it's COVID-free in Melbourne, touch wood it will be. So that's on the 18th and 19th of March next year. So that's coming up in a matter relating to industry associations. So keep a watch out for that one. That conference was cancelled earlier this year. I think they've adjusted the speakers and still putting it together, but the dates are the 18th and 19th of March. That's the important thing in relation to that event. Now, something I missed, and it was remiss of me, I missed it earlier a couple of weeks back, was this. James and Wendy at Proof Integrity Systems in Melbourne started their investigation agency 10 years ago. So James, for a decade now, has been running Proof Integrity in Melbourne. James comes along and speaks at Australian Security Academy events, and my word, he's a very good speaker with a lot of interest about what he does. And everyone that sees James actually speak at an event really enjoys it. He has a background in horse racing compliance and regulation. He's very well respected in that industry, and just great to see that since he left the racing game, 10 years has passed very quickly, and they have been for now a whole decade, James and Wendy, running Proof Integrity Systems in Melbourne. So congratulations, James and Wendy. That's a really great milestone to see being achieved. Excuse me, frog in my throat. Coming out this week is very important, nothing to do with industry associations, but just while I have time to mention it, the ATO has begun its compliance reviews of businesses who receive JobKeeper. And so far, they've sent 8,000 letters to businesses advising them to repay it. So they're going through it. This was always going to happen. There would have been misunderstandings in the rush, mistakes. They're not saying there's any outright frauds at this stage or anything like that, but they're saying that some people didn't qualify, so now they're looking to get it back. If you go back a few months on this program, we saw jobs advertised for the recollection of that money. So from their Adelaide Centre at the ATO, they're starting now to recover money that was incorrectly paid, and I'm assuming that this has got nothing to do with any fraud. So they were just mistakes, things that were done incorrectly outside of the rules at the time. So that's just something that happened this week. Now, just to finish off with our industry associations, we'll go back to the AILA and their Resolve newsletter that came out this week. Now, AILA is the Australian Insurance Law Association, so it's full of lawyers. Now, not just lawyers are members of the association, loss adjusters and private investigators are too. Now, the reason I'm a member of this association, and I enjoy being a member of this association, is it has such high level interest as far as conferences and events that they have and stuff that they do. So this one they had in their newsletter this week in the Resolve, and it was about a gentleman that got injured in a motorcycle accident and his claim was knocked back. Pat, can you tell us anything that you noticed about this claim, mate?
Yeah, this is an example where you need to look at the policy when you're doing any sort of insurance claim investigations. You need to understand what the policy says. Sometimes you might have a product disclosure statement in regards to a particular policy that someone's taken out. However, good advice would be to get a copy of that product disclosure statement and also look at the policy itself, because there may be some variations in what specifically is included in the terms and conditions of the contract. Now, what this one here was, it was a illness and injury insurance policy that was taken out by a man privately. So it's not a work cover issue. He's had an injury where he was on a motorbike and he had a motor vehicle accident, broke his legs, hurt his, or not broke his leg, did something with his leg, I can't remember, I think it was broken, had an injury to his wrist, and he was off work for 2 to 3 months. Now, the policy actually said that the total and permanent disability claim will come in, and he had that clause specifically added to his policy. So not only was it injury or illness, it had total and permanent disability, a clause in relation to that. So what happened was he had an operation, he came back to work a couple of months later, and he was unsuccessful in returning to the workplace. The employer said he was enthusiastic to come back, but he just couldn't handle it. Then as a result of that, another month or so down the track, he started developing a mental injury, like a psychiatric or psychological injury, which that became pretty significant. Then he went back off work again. He was assessed and they said he'll never work again in that role. Doesn't matter whether it's at that organisation or not, he'll never go back. However, at the end of an over 3 month period, he resigned and he never went back to work. Now, the court decision, they knocked it back on the first occasion because the first period wasn't long enough. However, what the court decided was that it had to be a period of 3 continuous months where they were taken away from their occupation that they did. And what happened there was, it was only until the mental injury or the psychiatric injury kicked in that was the 3 month period. There was no specification as to the fact that it needed to occur straight after the injury. There was no specification as to when that 3 month period commenced. So long as it was a 3 month period, that's when the total and permanent disability clause was satisfied.
So on appeal, they've said basically you can't assume that it's just 3 straight months. The wording must say 3 consecutive months. But it can be like he had. It was 3 months, but there was a break in between. So on appeal, he won his case.
Yeah, look, that's a classic example. Both those matters that we've looked at today, the personal injury one with the camp drafting, that issue there is a classic example of why you need to ask lots of questions. Now, this was a matter that went to court and it was decided, then it went to an appeal. So you as an investigator, you're not making decisions as to the outcome of claims or what the eventual outcome of the matter is. What you're doing is providing the decision makers with as much information as you can. Now, that first one, the plaintiff actually said they should have cancelled the event because of the number of people that fell. Now, there were some falls earlier on in that day, and I think there was a couple on the day before. But how do you decide whether it was the surface of the arena or the inexperience of the rider or the difficulty of the horse that they were riding? And that's what the judges actually looked at in the end. They said, yep, the arena had some patches of the arena that were moist. However, there were some photographs where it showed that there was dust being blown up off the ground. So the other thing with the rider, she was a very experienced rider. So obvious risk, very experienced rider, she should have made that decision herself not to participate if she thought it was going to be dangerous. So, and on the second one, with policies, you've got to read the policy and read the wording strictly. So there's another example of you need to understand the issues and ask plenty of questions to cover those issues for the decision maker, whether that's a claims manager, a workers' compensation authority, or ultimately down the track of court. So an old employer that I had in the private sector used to say, you're not going to get the information if you don't ask the questions. So you have to ask plenty of questions.
That's really good advice, Pat. Thanks very much for debriefing those two for us. Stick around, please, mate, and I'll go through some other things. We'll have a chat after the program, okay?
Cool.
Just gotta let it go.
I often sit and wish that I could just change my past. To think about you, Dad, there's so much shit that I could ask. Like, why am I still haunted by the day that you left?
Okay, there's some jobs around the country now. This one, CSI, Corporate Investigative Services, sorry, CIS, looking for a Southeast Queensland investigator. Again, get on my Facebook page, you'll see that job there, or you can jump on Seek in relation to that job. Now, this is a great one down in Victoria. The Ombudsman down in Victoria, they're looking for multiple investigation officers. Now, it's on my webpage, it's on Seek, it's on, sorry, not my webpage, my Facebook page. This is a really great job. Nobody on earth wants the Ombudsman coming after them. But the Ombudsman in Victoria, they're after multiple investigators. So if you studied government investigations, this is a really good job that you should be applying for. I don't think all of them are going to be ongoing jobs, but some of them will be. It's an opportunity for government investigators, that one. Down in Melbourne, for a private investigator, this is a beauty. It's a hotline operator for people who have basically complaints about their workplace. So this is an organisation that handles those complaints on behalf of multiple employers. And this is the first point of contact. So it's basically an entry-level position for one of the top investigation firms in Victoria. Hotline operator, get on Seek, you type that in and see if it's there. Or if not, jump on my Facebook page, you'll see it there. So that is a really great job, and I really recommend, if you really want to break into investigations, this is one of the really developing opportunities in investigation. So get in on it and have a look at it. It's a great starting point.
These jobs, like hotline operators, or when you work in a call centre taking calls in, that's crucial to how an investigation starts. Organisations such as the Victorian Building Authority, the RSPCA, things like that, organisations like that, when people ring in, the quality of the information and same with local councils, the quality of the information that their operator puts on the notes and the file notes that are compiled in regards to where do we send this job, is it under our jurisdiction, do we do it? That information that's taken initially is really important. It's really important.
My word, it is. And that's the point where they really want to tell it to you, and they're not changing their mind or feeling reticent about it. They really are phoning in with a serious matter at that point. So that's just 3 jobs. Look, there's lots of jobs out. I don't put all my jobs up on that Facebook page. You just go there. You can have a look for yourself. It's a lot of fun. This is what it looks like. Australian Private Investigators, Dave, Jim, Monica and myself there. Pat took the photo. It goes through positions vacant. People can advertise opportunities there. One of my colleagues, Smithy Miles, asked a question there a couple of weeks back. He's a real character. He's a lot of fun, Smithy. He likes to rub it in me on the email sometimes. We have a great laugh. And he advertised in there for a person up in Tamworth, see if they could do a job for him. So that he put on the Facebook page. You're allowed to do that. If you've got a vacancy, put the vacancy straight on there yourself. You can join it. So don't be afraid to do that. I have it there for the benefit of people in the industry to use and take advantage of. I don't put all the jobs up there. So Smithy said he was looking for a job in Tamworth. Here's my reply to him. I'm sure he's going to enjoy it. It's coming up live. There you go, Smithy. Get in touch with Frank. He'll help you out. He lives there now, Smithy. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy that, mate. Glad I could help you out, buddy. Thanks for rubbing it into me on Facebook all the time. It's nice to be able to have a bit of a go back. So get on that Facebook page and have a look at those vacancies. I only put 30% of them up there so you can see it. Now, I have been drumming home the last week and in our no risk program that we do on security risk management, governance and compliance about marketing your business. And I've been trying to give you tips on it. Yesterday, if you saw our no risk program, you would have heard about empowerment, entertainment and education in your marketing role on social media. That's what you're watching today. And that's what we're trying to achieve through this program. If you see something in here you really like, you don't have to watch it live. You can watch the replay on Sunday afternoon. You can watch the replay of episode 37 in August next year. So if there's something there you like, you can always go back to it. Now, one of the things that people quite often ask me, they say, look, I've got to get up. Well, I've just started. I don't want to look like a beginner. Should I buy likes on social media? Let's have a look at it. It's a false impression. It is freely available on the internet. You can get subscribers and likers to your YouTube channel, that sort of thing. If you look like this young lady, you're going to have no problem. You won't have to do it. You won't have to pay for it. You'll have organic likes. That's how it'll go. That's just the way social networking works. If you look like this guy, you might consider buying likes and followers because you just have no curb appeal in relation to that sort of thing. So should you buy those likes? Should you get subscribers? No, it doesn't work. Okay. I have seen investigators do it. And when you look at their website and you see they've got 30 videos and 3,600 subscribers, you know it's a fake. And you do not want to be an investigator in an investigation field with colleagues and stuff like that who just know you're faking your marketing. Because if you're going to fake your marketing, what else are you going to fake? So, be genuine. People aren't looking, they would rather that you were a genuine business, a genuine solutions offering organization with 5 followers, 2 subscribers, and 1 person that likes what you do. They're not going to be convinced by those numbers. What convinces the people is how genuine you are, how helpful you are, how you come across, how you provide solutions to what they're looking for. And social networking in marketing, they call it empowering, entertaining, and educating. So if you're doing that on your social media to build your business, keep doing it, right? Put your voice out there. Be heard and elevate your voice. So you'll be seen, you'll be heard, and you'll be elevated. Those numbers, they don't matter. If you go and have a look at the most effective marketing program I've got, it's over here on YouTube. You can watch all our past YouTubes from the last 8 years, and they're there, and you can see the numbers of people that have viewed them, that sort of thing. And if you look at this part of it, you can hit about and you'll see 108,198 people have watched YouTubes that I've created. Now, that's over 8 years. And if you look at my subscribers up here under my name, I don't know if you can see that, but under Michael Evans there, it says 411 subscribers. You don't get 3,900 subscribers when you look and sound like me on one video. It's not going to happen. So don't do that. Just be genuine about it. Last week I explained how Duxton Hill do it. So get on YouTube and look up Duxton Hill and see how they do it. And they do it very well. So you fit for your market, communicate with your market, be seen and elevate your voice, but do it genuinely. Don't buy likes, don't buy followings, don't buy subscribers. It just looks fake. A couple of things that have happened this week in the news. Up on the Gold Coast, Craig Gore was sentenced on Wednesday to 5 years in prison for fraud. 5 years. Now, they've said he's going to have to serve 2. So in relation to that, he's got to serve 2. Now, he's appealing against that. Now, fraud is something at that level, this is corporate level, very hard to get up on, isn't it, Pat, to get a successful prosecution on fraud?
Yeah, look, fraud, you really got to dig deep when you do fraud investigations, and you really have to make sure that you're showing that intention to commit the crime, like that mens rea. You've got to show that by the way that their activities are. So when you're looking to prove things, this comes back to the old issue of evidence. If you're going to prove something, try and prove it in as many ways as you can. If they're trying to look at transactions or patterns of transactions, try and examine them all and look at the way that they were committed. So, yeah, you've got to dig deep into all of that. And look, this day and age, your IT specialists they're big players in these type of investigations. I know that most investigation teams in compliance or like law enforcement fields, they have someone who's got some technical knowledge with computers and things like that. It's a very important part of how you do things.
That's another advantage Pat's just raised of our private investigation Facebook page, which is private investigation, corporate investigation, government investigation. You'll see jobs there like e-discovery, and you'll think, oh, well, I'm actually a computer expert. I could do that and combine that with my private investigation license. You never thought of it, but you'll see those sort of things. You'll see opportunities like IDR, and you'll go, what the hell is IDR? And that's internal dispute resolution. We live in 2021 where corporate organisations and government departments have a real cringe about their reputation and reputational risk and all that sort of things are really important today. So they have internal dispute resolution to resolve matters before they escalate, that sort of thing. In insurance claims where the IDR get involved, they're trying to stop the claims department from getting too carried away and on a minor technical point not paying a claim. So they're not very popular within the insurance company they work for at IDR, but these opportunities have different names than just investigator. So it might say e-discovery, it might say compliance and governance, it might say risk and compliance, it might say whatever, and you're looking for investigator, it might just fit with what you're looking for. So don't write it off. Also, I might advertise a job which is a senior manager for $250,000 in there, and you might think, oh, I'm just starting out. How am I going to get that? You've got to look at, there's a range of people in that group. We have lawyers and barristers in that group, ex-detectives in that group. We have emerging beginners in that group. They're all welcome. And there's jobs there across a range of experiences for everybody. So when you look at those big paying jobs today, in 10 years' time, you might be experienced enough, just like James Williams is on his 10th anniversary this year, to go that next level in something else. So it comes over time. It doesn't all happen at once. So keep that in mind. Well, people, we've gone over our time. Sorry, Pat.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Another just a quick comment. Take advantage of getting on LinkedIn and networking, and particularly have a look at the different groups that are on there. Monitor the groups. There's groups there that deal with digital evidence. There's groups there that deal with workers' compensation. There's all sorts of different groups. I don't have all the notifications coming and overloading my email. I switch all that off. But once or twice every fortnight, I'll get on and I'll have a look at, see what's been posted, have a look at the things that are topical at the time. And that's another way to look at identifying opportunities that you might be able to pursue, or it might give you a bit of inspiration to say, hang on, I think I like the look of that. Then you'll do some more research on it. That's correct, yeah.
And the other thing that I wanted to get across this week, I played this video last week, but I'll just play it again. This is the EPA down in Victoria. They had a successful prosecution and using drones as part of their evidence gathering. They had another one this week for dumping contaminated waste at Daylesford in Victoria. Now, Daylesford in Victoria is a pristine environment where people go for hot spring spa treatments and healing and stuff like that. And contaminated waste was dumped on a farm. And the EPA in Victoria had a successful prosecution on that. So really pleased to see that. They use drones prolifically at the EPA. They have ground penetrating radar on their drones so they can see buried chemical 44-gallon drums, that sort of thing. So it's really forcing the people that do take on the role of the disposing illegally of toxic waste, they have to dump it in the sea now. And that's more of an effort, more expensive, and they've got to do that in the dark to try and get away with it. So the EPA are really cracking down on that sort of thing. That's a win for the wombats and a win for the platypuses and a win for the Murray cod and all that sort of thing in the water system and ecosystem in Victoria. Well done, EPA. So people, that's the end of our program. As always, I'm going out with my Koreans because I just like the way they wind up. So here they are.
작전 종료. 전원 복귀할 것.
complete. Pat and I will see you next week. I'm Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy. Have a great week, investigators.